It's not very often when an injury to an offensive lineman makes headline news in Provo, Utah. But when you're a team captain and a fan favorite, well, that's what happens. Connor Pay addresses his injury, what his timeline is. We also talk about the win over Baylor and look ahead to a bye week. It's all ahead on a jam-packed edition of Locked On Cougars.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. Appreciate all of you who we like to call everydayers right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. All right, pleased to welcome in now BYU team captain and all-around fine gentleman, Connor Pay. Welcome back to the podcast. And Connor, let's start off by addressing the topic du jour. What is your status? What happened to you against Baylor?
Yeah, so unfortunately on the first play of the second drive, fractured the fifth metatarsal of my left foot. And so, kind of a bummer, not the funnest thing in the world, but thankfully it's something that I've done before. My other foot in high school, and so I know the surgery and the recovery process very well. So I'm comfortable with it. And I'll have surgery this week. I'll have a screw put in that fifth metatarsal, and then 6 weeks recovery is the goal. Is the goal. So I'm going to do everything I can to make it back for that Utah game. Obviously, anyone who's familiar with Jones fractures and having a screw put in your fifth metatarsal, a lot has to do with how well that screw seeds with your bone and how well it grabs on and how well the four corners of that fracture heal. So I'll have another set of x-rays at 4 weeks. And if it looks like that fracture is looking good on all four corners and that screw looks like it's really attaching well to the bone, then once that screw attaches, you can progress really fast. So I'm hoping that, at that set of x-rays, everything looks good. If it looks like it needs a little more time, it might be 7 weeks. He might have to bump me to 7 or possibly 8 if I need it. But as of right now, the goal with me and with the doctor is 6 weeks. So I'm trying to get back for that Utah game.
So I guess regardless, even if it pushes out a little bit further, your plan is to be back this season at some point regardless.
Yes.
Okay. Now, there's another, I thought it was a heartwarming story that came out, and I believe it was Spencer Linton who may have reported this, that Elder Ronald A. Rasband of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, he was down there in Waco with you guys on that road trip. I don't know if he had church business in the area, if he just simply was on the trip, but he was at the game, went down into the locker room, and gave you a priesthood blessing. I'm going to let you take that however you want. Kalani told the media that it was your story to tell, so please tell it.
Yeah, no, I think, a lot of the details, I think for obvious reasons, for those who are members of the church, I'm going to keep to myself because that was a pretty sacred experience. But, it was Elder Rasband and I have ironically become pretty good friends over the last few months. We've had lunch on multiple occasions just to talk about BYU and things, because he's in charge of seeing the progression of BYU and BYU athletics. And so, we've started to have a lot of conversations on ways we think BYU can improve. And so that's kind of how it started. And then, he kind of just has become more of a friend. And so, when I heard that he was flying to the game with us, obviously I was excited, got a chance to chat with him at the airport, and he's interested in my brother's recruiting and things like that, and trying to figure out how to get him to come here and all that. And so, when it happened, I had the impression, I think, I feel like I'm at a place now where I have a relationship with him enough where it would be appropriate for me to ask him for a blessing. And, it was pretty cool when I went up to Peter Acera, kind of our logistics guy who kind of handles, liaisoning with Elder Rasband and making sure he's in all the right places, and with Elder Rasband's security guard, Ty. They said it's funny, Elder Rasband actually had the impression that he needed to come down here and give you a blessing. And so I'm really grateful for him that he was more than willing to do that. And my dad was there, obviously, at the game. So it was pretty cool to have my dad, anoint me with oil, and then to have Elder Rasband seal that anointing. Had some special people standing in that circle, and Elder Rasband kind of invited me to invite who I wanted to be in that circle. And so it was him, my dad, Kalani, President Reese, and Keith Orkink, the VP of BYU, some of the men that I really respect as not only leaders of the university, but as worthy priesthood holders, and also friends, and men that I felt like I could turn to and felt comfortable asking. And honestly, in reflecting on that experience, that's probably all the detail I'm going to share on the experience itself, but it just makes me really grateful that I chose to come to BYU, and it's that opportunity would have never come if I had gone somewhere else. And obviously I didn't foresee this happening. One of the things I've prided myself on in my career here is my durability. 4 years, 40 plus starts, and I've never had an injury that's even kept me out of practice. And so this was kind of the last thing I was expecting, but for BYU football to have provided that connection between Elder Rasband and me, and then for him to be willing, that was a really, really special experience. And, I think, for me, that's a major selling point for a ton of the high profile LDS athletes out there in high school, who are trying to make their college decision. Is you get connections, and the spiritual aspects of BYU are somewhere that you're not going to be able to find anywhere else. And so obviously I'm just really grateful that there were 4 or 5 men in that locker room that I could turn to that I knew were worthy priesthood holders, and that in a moment when I really needed it, or was able to give me and participate in a priesthood blessing. And if I had gone to any other school in America, it would have been pretty rare for me to be able to find one person in that locker room, maybe, who was a worthy Melchizedek priesthood holder who could have given me a blessing in that setting. So, I'm really, really grateful that, I'm at BYU, and, just the opportunities and the resources spiritually that it provides. Because obviously I was pretty, pretty distraught when it first happened. Just because not so much that, that, I was hurt and thinking about NFL things and all that other stuff, but just more so, feeling like you let your teammates down. And, that's hard, and especially, being a captain of the team, a senior, I feel a lot of responsibility on that front, so feeling like you let your teammates down, that was really difficult in the first hour or so after it had happened. And, after that blessing, it really put my mind at ease. And, and obviously my teammates are just awesome. And, they all made their way up to me at some point on the sideline or in the locker room. And that meant a lot to me. And, so just motivation for me to get back better than ever. And, and I think now, having been able to clear my head and gain perspective a little bit, there's so many things looking back now that could have been so much worse. Any other type of injury to my foot would have been season ending. Mm-hmm. This was, of all the injuries that could have happened, this was the one that gets me back the quickest, and so I'm really grateful for that, and the timing where we have 2 bye weeks in this next little stretch where I could break my foot, have surgery, and be back, and have only in the middle of a season and possibly only miss 3 games. Like it's a pretty remarkable thing. And so I'm hoping and I'm praying and that it does work out that way and we don't have to extend it a couple more weeks, because I definitely want to play in that Utah game. But just I think looking back and getting perspective, there's so many tender mercies that have happened along the way, and just the outpouring of love from BYU fans. I got hundreds of messages on X and on Instagram, and that's why I kind of put out that tweet thanking everybody, because there was just so many that I couldn't respond to all of them individually. So tried to do kind of a blanket thank you to everybody. But so Cougar Nation's a special thing. They get fired up and they're really excited when you're doing well, and they're really upset when you're doing bad. But when it comes to real challenges in your life, there's no other fan base like BYU. And I think that was evident in my situation. I think it showed with Avery Johnson's situation last week and the donations towards his principal and his cancer treatment. Like when it comes to real life challenges, nobody turns out like Cougar Nation does. So just really grateful for BYU, the fans, the connections, and everything it brings to me. So that's that's kind of all I really want to say on it. That's all I've kind of been thinking about.
Hey, I that was heartwarming. It was informative, and thank you for telling it. I'll just say that. And I'm just going to put it this way. I'm a big believer in priesthood blessings. And if you got a prophet of God putting his hands on your head, I'm going to expect you're going to be back sooner rather than later. That's my personal opinion on the matter. All right. We're going to take a break here. We're going to step aside for just a minute. I want to come back. Now, Kalani did indicate that you are still a team captain. You're still going to need to lead this team. We're going to talk about what you're hoping to accomplish now that you work from the sidelines for the time being, and we'll get to that momentarily as we roll on right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends, a new friend over at Roy. Now, what is Roy? It's not your friend Roy. It's not Roy High School. It's time to highlight our Roy Player of the Year. What Roy is a new platform that lets fans make contributions directly to their favorite athletes. All you got to do is download Roy for your iOS or your Android device and enter the referral code Locked On, and you'll be automatically entered to win a sweepstakes to win $5,000 in cash. No purchase necessary, and of course, it's void where prohibited. This week, we have selected Darius Lassiter as our player of the week because he had career highs in receptions, 8 yards, 120, and obviously had a big touchdown in BYU's win against Baylor. I felt like it was an easy pick there when you notch those career highs, and I am giving him, speaking of Darius Lassiter, $100 on Roy. If you were impressed as we were with his performance on Saturday or any other BYU football player, you can show him or any other BYU athlete love too. Just hop on Roy and throw in a few bucks. Everybody pitches in just $10. It adds up fast for a guy like Darius. Now you have the chance to show your appreciation for Darius Lassiter and a standout performance this week, as well as what he'll continue to bring to the BYU football program. The good news is this is going to be a week-by-week thing with our friends at Roy. So stay tuned for more opportunities like this. But once again, download the Roy app today on iOS or Android and get on it today. Get off the sidelines and get into the NIL game and do it with our friends over at Roy. Thank you once again for being Locked On Cougars, your first view and or listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for being with us. Continuing on now with Connor Pay, BYU team captain. Now, Connor, bye weeks are important weeks. As you mentioned, you're going to obviously be working on healing up. You won't be on the practice field actually going through drills. But Kalani Sitake, when he was talking to us in the media, he said that Connor is still a leader for us. He's a team captain, and now he has to lead us essentially in a different way. So I want to start there. How are you going to approach this as you balance both, obviously, surgery, rehab, but also continuing to be a team leader for the BYU football program?
I mean, I don't know. I don't really plan on doing anything different, other than, instead of me screaming and yelling and firing people up out there in pads, I'm going to be rolling around on my scooter, and doing the same things. But, I think just in my small opportunities, I get to talk to the team and stuff like that as a whole. Those situations aren't really going to change. I think it's more the on the field, in real time leadership stuff that's going to be a little different. And I think that's mainly going to be now. It's my job to make sure, my replacement is ready to roll. And I think that's going to be probably my biggest focus over the next couple weeks, is making sure I'm spending lots of time in the film room with those guys and on the field, and just making sure that they're on their P's and Q's. because I have confidence in really there's 2 or 3 guys who, have shown that they can play. And it's like because obviously Sonny is that first guy, and and so I want to make sure that he's ready to play, and then if he's not, then Bruce or Jake Eichhorn, making sure that those guys are ready to play. And so Coach Woods and I have already had a couple conversations where he's kind of given me the responsibility to make sure that those guys are dialed in and ready to play, just because it's it's a little different mindset when you've spent most of the year as a backup, and then especially preparing for games as a center is different than how you prepare for games at the other positions. There's kind of a lot more on the mental side that you have to be prepared for. Um, and so I think that's where most of my leadership is going to lie, and then obviously just being of voice of encouragement and stuff on the sidelines. Again, I'm going to be hauling up and down those sidelines on my scooter, trying to scream and fire people up, and at the games and at practice. And so, I think, and I told Coach Woods, I'm like, look, dude, I'm going to be so freaking bored. You better put me to work. Like, I'm going to get all my rehab stuff done in the morning, and then it's like, what do I do the rest of the freaking day? And so it's like you have a third GA for the next few weeks here. It's like I'm at your disposal. And so we'll see what fun, interesting, miserable things Coach Woods makes me do. But I think that's kind of how it'll look.
All right. Well, I'm expecting Connor, you to land speed records on this scooter. I'm going to be keeping an eye out for you on those sidelines. But you talk about Sonny being essentially the chief backup. I was going to ask you about that. So it sounds like he was your main backup. So him sliding over was a planned thing there. But it's going to require a reworking of the interior of this offensive line. And obviously, the nice part is, if it's going to happen, it's a good time to happen now. You mentioned the fact that you have the 2 weeks off now to kind of get guys ingrained, whether it's Sonny at center, Bruce at right guard. I'm assuming Waylon reprises his role as your stalwart at left guard there. It's going to require work to get them up to speed. And I don't mean to kind of bloviate on this, but it felt like Sonny was put into a tough position. Because as you mentioned, when you prepare as a center, you prepare a different way than you do as a guard, which he was preparing for all week. And all of a sudden, you go down second series of the game. He's like, oh, wait, I got to slide over here. And I felt like in some ways he was put in a no-win situation in that circumstance. But the good news is, and I want your thought on this, he now has 2 weeks to get himself ready if he is going to be your replacement for the interim.
Yeah, for sure. And it is always hard when you haven't been repping it a lot in practice to switch, especially to a position like center, because it's very different from the other 4 positions on the offensive line. And so honestly, all in all, I feel like Sonny did a great job for the circumstances he was put in. And especially with what Baylor started to throw at him in the second half, I think they were realizing that when they were just lining up straight, we were kind of knocking them off the ball a little bit. And so they started moving and blitzing and doing a lot of things in the second half. And that's difficult stuff for a backup center to have to handle. And I thought all in all, he did a phenomenal job being kind of put up against the wall like that, so to speak. And but yeah, no, I think Sonny's really smart, and a really good football player. That's why he was starting at right guard. Before he had that week where it was a little banged up, and so I think with 2 full weeks of prep, he'll do just fine. And that's how I feel about all those guys. Where it's like I think with adequate time and preparation, I've total confidence in all those guys. Like, people didn't even notice that our third string right guard started against Kansas State, which is huge. Going unnoticed is the best thing you can do as an offensive lineman. And
yeah, and
so I have confidence in our depth, and I think especially with time and preparation, knowing what position they're going to play, I think they're going to be more than capable to do really well.
Now, overall, bye weeks are important for teams. Essentially, you get to recuperate a bit. You guys get to catch up on schoolwork and the like. But what is, if you had a to-do list, what you wanted to accomplish in this bye week as a football program, what would be on your list?
I would say, get healthy is number one. I think that's your number one goal of a bye week, is just the guys that have those minor bumps and bruises, get those guys back. But also, when we talked a lot today in our players meeting, the captains talked a lot to the team about how this is a work week, just like any other week, how there's individual things that every person in that room needs to improve on. and you have to attack this week and improve on those things. Like the best teams in the country, and I feel like it's something we've been able to do so far this year, is to reset and attack and improve each week. And you have to do that every week of the season, regardless of whether you're playing a game or not. And so I think the message today was the same as it was everywhere. Like, look, we don't have a game, but it doesn't matter. We're resetting. It's Monday. It's a new week. We have to attack this week and improve and earn the right to play well against Arizona. And that starts this week. And so I think I just want to see that shift and just the reset that we've been having week in and week out. I think that's one of the strengths of this team. It's just mentally we're able to go from next week to the next week to the next week and not carry over the good or the bad, and understand that every week is a new week. And with how much parity there is in college football, you never know what's going to happen any given Saturday. So you got to prepare for that team's absolute best, because they could very well come out and play it and you'd be in a dogfight. And so I just want to see that reset again and that passion and that attack at practice tomorrow. And just based on today, I think they're going to do that.
The last thing for me on the bye week, obviously, is without a game, it can be easy for you guys to say, okay, let's take it a little bit easy. You said the coaches have said, hey, it's a new week. We got to attack this with essentially the same passion and vigor we've attacked every other week. What are, obviously, like we've talked about, you're not going to be out there actually leading from the front, so to say. You're not going to be out there actually participating. But what can you do to make sure the energy level stays up and these guys attack it like they should be if it were any other game week?
I think I could just do my best to bring the juice,
okay,
right? And just be excited and fired up, during the individual periods, even though I'll be off to the side watching, encouraging, getting fired up when guys do things well. And just encouraging guys to improve. And, I think that's something we do as a group pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think that's just what I'm gonna have to be. I'm gonna have to be an energizer bunny, where sometimes, and more so than normal, sometimes when I'm in practice, I kind of get dialed into my zone a little bit with what I'm trying to improve upon or what's going on. And I won't talk that much. And I'll do certain things like just because I'm kind of just dialed in and focused on what I'm doing. And then I sometimes have to be like, oh crap, like, yeah, I need to be vocal. I need to be, to be encouraging the guys. And so now this week I can just be all energy, all encouragement, to make sure that they attack the week, because a bye week is, you do let off a little bit. Like the practices will be shorter, but the intensity can't change. It's like they're going to shorten the duration to help take care of our bodies, but it has to be still that intense, all week long. And it's like the coaches will take care of the periods and the sports scientists and all that stuff and making sure we're healthy. That's not our responsibility as players. Our responsibility is to go out there and go balls to the wall every single day so that we can improve and get better. And, like I said, you have to earn the right every individual week to play well. And, we get 2 weeks to earn that right against Arizona.
All right. We are running short on time, but we'll fit in as many questions from our listeners as we can. A lot of them already been answered. A lot of people asking about your health, obviously, what the Elder Rasband situation, all that going down. But we got some other ones that are out there, and we'll get to those momentarily right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, FanDuel is here for you guys, no matter what you're into when it comes to your sports betting needs, whether you're an NFL fan, college football, NBA, NHL, feel like tiddlywinks, whatever you're into, they got an option for you guys. A really simple and easy to use app. You can download it today. And right now, you can start the season with NFL with a big return on FanDuel because they are America's #1 sports book. When you get the hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you're placing your bets. You can have some fun and also stay up to date on everything going on. The best part is you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Of course, that's $200. First $5 bet, simple as that. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, courtesy of your friends over at FanDuel. So go to FanDuel.com to get started today. Once again, that's FanDuel.com to get started today. It's all courtesy, once again, of your friends at FanDuel. They are America's #1 sports book. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. If you have not done so already, to join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group is really simple and easy to do. You get a 14-day free trial. Join us today. You'll get an opportunity to ask guys like Connor Pay questions here on the podcast. All right, Connor, before we go here, let's rumble through some of these questions that were sent in. And there was let's put it this way. Kalani was kind of interesting in his press conference on Monday. He questioned, or how much time try to say this? He wasn't asked about it, but at the end of his press conference, he said, unprompted, I want to address the conservative versus aggressive play calling thought process with regards to the Baylor game.
I love it.
And I can say I think part of it comes from a podcast like this, because I did question the second half play calling in my own respect, just looking at it from the outside. So I want to get your thoughts. I've had like 3 or 4 people here who are saying, hey, Jake, have Connor please address the quote unquote conservative versus aggressive play calling mentality in that second half.
Yeah, no, I didn't think it was conservative at all. It really looks conservative when you don't execute.
Sure.
Right? And we didn't execute very well in that second half, because A-Ride was still trying to chuck that thing down the field.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then there was a couple runs that were just absolute gashes if just one person does their assignment right, or we had an MA here or someone missed their block there. And so I think it's really easy for it to come off as conservative when it's a 1 or 2 yard gain, because we screwed it up. It doesn't have much to do with the play call. But no, I think A-Rod was trying to heave that thing down the field all 4 quarters, and it just it didn't go as planned. Sometimes we didn't execute as properly as we should have in that second half, and I think we didn't respond to their adjustments as good as we should have in terms of us recognizing certain pressures or movements and things like that. And so it's really easy for it to look like super conservative when your offense kind of just doesn't handle the changes as well and then execute as well as you would have hoped.
All right. Next one comes from Ian. This is his 5-year-old asking this question to you, Connor. My 5-year-old asked you a question this week, and I hoped you'd ask Connor about it. Question: do football players ever go to the bathroom during the game?
Yes. All the time. The crappy part is, it's like we have that medical tent we can go in.
Okay.
It's like we have asked for so long. Can we put a place to pee in that thing? It just sucks so bad when it's like, you're trying so hard to hydrate before the game, make sure you're not cramping or doing anything like that. Sometimes you have to pee. And it's like, man, I got to take off and run all the way into the locker room. Like, what, especially for someone like me, who's like, I'm on the field every offensive play. Yeah. It's like we could get a pick or something right now. Like, I don't know if I have time.
Okay.
And so it's like, we have been begging to find a way to put a little porta potty or something on the sideline so we can pee. But yes, people do. If it's bad enough, you'll see guys take off into the locker room, mid-game, but most guys try to take care of it either right before we go out or at halftime.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Good question. It's a valid question. I think that absolutely
it's a totally valid question.
Yeah. Good question here from Brandon. It says, because of the team's religious diversity, are there ever non-traditional LDS prayers given? For example, does Jake ever offer a prayer according to Jewish tradition, etc.?
Yeah, all the time. To start our team meeting every day, we start with a prayer and we just go up and down the rows of seats. And so there's guys from various religious backgrounds where Jake will pray in Hebrew. Maury Bamba is Muslim, and so he'll get up there and he'll pray in Arabic.
Okay.
And it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun to hear all the different types of prayers and to know that everyone is worshiping the same God, but in their own way. It's pretty interesting.
Well, that's cool to hear. I would have assumed that was the case, but it's good to hear that actually it does happen. I had no idea that Maury was Muslim, so that's cool to hear that. We all know that Jake, the self-proclaimed BYU Jew and everything, so there's a lot of that stuff going on. That's really cool to hear. Marlon asked this question. You've addressed it before, but I don't think everybody's heard your answer. I'd like to ask Connor why a lot of the offensive linemen are not wearing knee braces this year.
Yeah, no, it's that's just kind of a personal decision. Mm-hmm. I think with how much zone schemes we run and how active we are as offensive linemen, how we're moving, it's not like we're just globbing onto people and just sitting there for the entire play. Mm-hmm. Where it's like we got to be able to play really fast. And while those knee braces, they protect you against the 1 in 1,000 You know, that means you're a little bit slower on every play to protect you against the one hit that may never come. And so for me, it was just, you know, I wanted that little bit of speed back. And, you know, it's something I've always wanted to do, but, you know, when Coach Funk was here, he just wouldn't allow it. And so it took me, I had to wear him down a little bit in the off season, but I finally got Coach Woods to agree to not let me wear him in games. And yeah, no, I've really liked not wearing them. You just feel like you're able to move a little better. I'm able to bend a little better, and just, you know, your body's able to move more naturally and a little more fluidly. If we were just like a major power team, gap team duo, where I was back blocking all the time, always having people hitting my legs and stuff, I would wear them. But we're not that type of team. And so we run a more pro style offense, a more NFL style offense. And so, you know, there's a reason none of those guys in the NFL wear them unless they've had a previous injury. They need that. You need that extra bit of speed and that extra bit of leverage. So personally, that's why I do it.
Well, I'll just add this. There are studies out there that say that wearing braces actually make you more prone potentially to injury as well, because your knee becomes dependent on them at times. So, I just
anything that adds to my case, I will take it.
There you go. Base level research there. I'll show you. It's out there. All right. Final question real quick here. We're running short on time. It's a good question here from Tyson. What does Connor have to say to all of his fans who didn't believe at the beginning of the season that BYU would be 5-0 at this point?
It's not your fault. It's not your fault. We didn't give you much to hope for last season. And as a fan on the outside, it's near impossible to see what we see. The individual commitment from all the players starting back in January, how well the offseason went, how different everything's felt, you know, how committed everyone on this team in particular is to the details, you know, and how willing everyone is to buy into Kalani's culture. Like none of the fans get to see the months of buildup leading up to that, where it's like as players, we could feel it that this was different, you know, and so – and just keep on keeping on. We're trying to do our very best for you. And you know, you never know what's going to happen. We could go undefeated. We might drop a game here, drop a game there, but that's the beauty of conference plays. You can go in through the ups and downs and still go take your conference and have a chance at the playoff. And you know, obviously, we're going to go in and try to win every freaking game we can. And so we appreciate you guys showing out with us this year and being with us. But yeah, no, I think. Yeah, no, your doubts were well founded with the products we put on the field last year. So none of us are blaming you for feeling that way, but you know, obviously we knew a little different.
I can understand that. All right, well, Connor, first off, best wishes to you. Here's hoping that it's a speedy recovery, because I think I speak for the nation out there and saying, want to see you back out on that field ASAP. All right.
I want to be back out there ASAP.
I'm sure you do.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for the prayers.
Well, we'll continue to check in with you. I can assure our fans of that, because I think some people are wondering, well, is Connor going to stop checking in? He did throughout the entire offseason, everybody. So if Connor, I can assure you, we'll still get his thoughts, because he'll still be there on the sidelines. We'll check in with you next week, Connor, and appreciate the time as always. All right.
Sounds good.
All right, that's Connor Pay. I'm Jake Hatch. A big thank you as always, once again, for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. Until tomorrow, of course, have a great rest of your day / evening, whenever you really hear and or watch this. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen and or view of the day. And of course, big thank you to all of you once again from everydayers right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.